The rain tapped lightly against the window pane as Adrian sat alone on the edge of his bed, hands folded tightly between his knees. The warmth from the family dinner still lingered downstairs. Faint laughter, the sound of glasses clinking, the hum of a dishwasher. But upstairs in his dimly lit room, silence had fallen like a curtain. His eyes were fixed on the door, not with anticipation, but with dread. He didn't want it to happen again. And yet, he knew it would. Adrian had always thought of himself as quiet, invisible even, an afterthought in most conversations. But, somehow, Luca had seen him. From the very first family barbecue when Elena brought him home as her boyfriend, Luca's eyes had lingered too long. And one evening, just weeks after the engagement, everything crossed a line that could never be, uncrossed. He told himself it was just a mistake. People made them. People forgave them. But what kind of mistake happens more than once? The door creaked open with familiar carelessness. Adrian's breath caught. Luca stepped inside and shut it softly behind him. No words, no excuses, just the sound of the latch sliding into place as though it were part of a rehearsed routine. He looked the same as always, black dress shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled up, the scent of his cologne trailing behind him like memory. But something in his eyes had changed. They looked heavier. "You shouldn't be here," Adrian whispered, though he didn't move. "I know." Luca's voice was low, a thread barely holding together. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that begged for breaking. Luca's gaze drifted down to Adrian's trembling hands. His were steady, sure, practiced. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt in front of him. "Tell me to leave," he said quietly. "And I will." But Adrian couldn't. The words were there, he felt them, tasted them, but they stuck in his throat like ash. Instead, he looked into the face of the man who was supposed to marry his sister in 3 weeks and felt his resolve collapse. "I hate this," Adrian said, a breath caught between a confession and a cry. "I hate what we're doing." "I do, too," Luca murmured, inching closer. "But not enough to stop." His lips touched Adrian's like an apology, soft at first, seeking forgiveness, then harder, deeper, demanding it. Adrian didn't push him away. He never did. His body betrayed him every time, leaning into the warmth, the electricity, the lie. The world outside the room didn't exist, just rain and breathing, and the way Luca's hands found the back of his neck like they belonged there. Adrian's thoughts were spiraling, his sister's face, her laughter, her trust, and yet all he could feel was Luca's mouth against his skin. They collapsed onto the bed in a tangle of limbs and guilt, the sheets cold, but their bodies fevered. Every kiss was a secret sealed with shame. Every touch screamed a name that wasn't Adrian's. It wasn't love, it wasn't hate. It was a wound they both kept scratching. When it was over, they lay facing opposite directions. The silence returned, heavier than before. "I'm marrying her," Luca said, his voice flat. "I know. But I think about you when I'm with her." Adrian closed his eyes. That was the worst part, that it was never just physical. Luca had invaded places inside him he didn't know could ache. He sat up, pulling the blanket around himself, like armor. "You should go." Luca didn't move. Adrian turned to face him. "Please." Luca's jaw tightened, but he stood, buttoned one sleeve with slow deliberation. Before leaving, he looked back, eyes clouded. "I didn't mean for this to happen," Adrian laughed bitterly. "Neither did I." The door shut behind him with a soft click, but the sound echoed like a gunshot. Alone again, Adrian stared at the ceiling. The taste of Luca still lingered on his lips, and it made him sick. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, low and unresolved. He reached under his bed and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook, pages filled with words he could never say aloud. Some were letters to Luca, Most were apologies to Elena. None were enough. He turned to a blank page. The ink bled heavy as he wrote, "If loving you means breaking her, then maybe we were never meant to begin." He closed the book and placed it beneath his pillow. And for the first time that night, he cried. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window, in pale gold catching the steam rising from Adrian's untouched mug of coffee. He sat at the table across from his sister, trying to keep his hands still, his face unreadable. Elena stirred sugar into her tea with soft clinks, humming a wedding song under her breath. She looked blissful, radiant even, and every smile she offered stabbed at the hollow center of Adrian's chest. "I think I'll go with lilies," she said suddenly, eyes bright. "Luca says they remind him of home. Isn't that sweet?" Adrian managed a nod. "Yeah, sweet." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "You've been so quiet lately. Are you okay?" He almost told her. The words sat there, perched behind his teeth like a knife ready to fall, but he swallowed them down. "Just tired," he muttered. Her face softened. "Well, don't forget you're my only family now. You're not just my brother. You're my anchor, you know?" Guilt roared through him, sharp and hot. He pulled his hand back gently and forced a smile. "I know." But he didn't feel like an anchor. He felt like a crack in the hull. Later that afternoon, Luca texted. Just one word. "Tonight?" Adrian stared at the screen for a long time, his thumb hovering over the reply. He wanted to scream. He wanted to smash the phone. He wanted to say no. But instead, his fingers betrayed him once more. "Come after she sleeps." The apartment grew, quiet after 10. Elena had fallen asleep on the couch with a wedding magazine draped over her chest. Adrian covered her with a blanket and stared down at her peaceful face, his throat tightening. She had always believed in happy endings, and she believed in Luca. She believed in both of them. A soft knock broke the silence. Adrian opened the door and Luca slipped inside, looking around as if expecting ghosts. He didn't speak, just reached for Adrian with hands that trembled more than usual. Adrian pulled away. "No," he said. "We need to talk." Luca's expression shifted, an unreadable mask of panic and longing. "What is there to say?" "You're marrying her, Luca," Adrian hissed, voice low but fierce. "You made a choice. You made promises." Luca stepped back, but his voice cracked. "And none of that stops me from needing you." Adrian wanted to punch him. Instead, he laughed bitterly. "You're a coward." Luca's eyes narrowed. "And you're still letting me in. What does that make you?" The words landed like stones. Neither of them moved. "I write letters sometimes," Adrian whispered, "to her, telling her everything." Luca's brows lifted. "What?" "I never send them, but I write them." "Why? Would you?" "Because I can't live with this." Adrian's eyes shimmered, but he didn't blink. "I can't keep pretending she's the only one being betrayed." Luca exhaled slowly. "You love her." "I do," Adrian said, a tremble in his voice. "But not like you think. I love her enough to hate myself for what we've done." Luca ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting to the hallway. "Do you want me to end it?" "Yes," Adrian said instantly. "But you won't." Silence fell again, deeper than the night outside. Then Luca spoke, soft and broken. "I think about you every day, not just at night, all the time." Adrian's resolve shook and he reached out, touching Luca's face. "That makes it worse." There was no kiss this time, just breathing, just ache. Later, alone again, Adrian returned to his room and pulled out the notebook. His fingers trembled as he slid one of the letters free, the one he had written weeks ago. It was honest. Too honest. A confession soaked in shame and heartbreak. He pressed it to his lips for a moment, then tucked it under his pillow again. The next morning, Sunlight filtered in lazily through the blinds. Elena's laughter rang out from the living room as she straightened cushions and hummed another wedding song. Adrian's chest tightened. As she gathered laundry from his room, her hand brushed against the pillow. "What's this?" she asked, lifting the folded paper curiously. Adrian froze in the doorway. Just something I was writing." Alice smiled, oblivious, and handed it back. "You're always scribbling something. Must be that artistic soul of yours." He took it back with shaking hands, hiding the panic behind a hollow grin. She turned to leave, humming again. His phone buzzed. Luca's name lit the screen. "Can I see you tonight?" Adrian stared at it, heart pounding, as the bedroom door closed softly behind her. The air was thick with perfume and anticipation. White ribbons fluttered along the porch rails. Guests milled about, sipping champagne under a canopy of sunlight and soft music. Adrian stood at the edge of it all, his hands in his pockets, a forced smile pinned to his face. He watched his sister glow in her wedding dress, lilies woven through her hair, eyes brighter than he'd ever seen them. She waved at him from the staircase, joy radiating from her like heat. He waved back, chest tightening. She looked beautiful, radiant, unaware. "You look pale," she said when she reached him, looping her arm through his. "Don't faint on me during the vows." Adrian managed a laugh. "Wouldn't dream of it." She grinned and leaned in. "You're my favorite person, you know? I couldn't have gotten through this year without you." Adrian swallowed hard. "I know." He watched her disappear into a sea of guests, his guilt pulsing like a wound reopened. He hadn't seen Luca all morning, not since the night Adrian nearly gave Elena the letter and then didn't. He thought maybe Luca had finally come to his senses. Maybe he'd do the right thing. But as the ceremony began and Luca stepped up beside the officiant, all Adrian saw was silence, the same kind of silence that had followed their last argument. He stood across from Elena now, ring in his hand, mask unshaken. Adrian sat in the front row, hands clasped, the letter tucked deep in his coat pocket. He could feel its weight against his ribs like a confession held too long. When Luca looked at him, just once, fleetingly, Adrian looked away. The vows began. Elena's voice trembled with happiness. Luca's remained steady, almost rehearsed. Adrian watched every word land between them like bricks in a wall he'd helped build, one that now separated them all. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the guests erupted in cheers. Adrian did not clap. He simply stood and walked away. He found a quiet corner behind the tent, the music muffled and laughter distant. He pulled out the letter, unfolded it, stared at the words like they belonged to someone else. It began with, "I'm sorry," and ended with, "I love him. Why are you here?" Adrian turned. Luca stood behind him, tie loose, eyes dark and uncertain. Adrian didn't answer. He just held the letter out. Luca took it with hesitant fingers, reading quickly. His expression didn't change. When he reached the end, he folded it back up and handed it to Adrian. "You're not going to give it to her," he said. "No. You still could." Adrian shook his head. "She doesn't deserve to be broken by both of us." Luca stepped closer. "I told her I loved her today. I meant it." Adrian nodded. "That doesn't mean you didn't love me?" Luca hesitated, then said, "You were the only thing I couldn't control." Adrian looked at him. "You never tried." Long silence stretched between them. The music changed. Something slow and romantic drifted on the breeze. "She's your wife now," Adrian said softly. "So it ends here." Luca's voice cracked. "Does it have to?" Adrian stepped forward and kissed him, not with hunger, not with guilt, with goodbye. When he pulled away, he said, If I stay, I'll hate myself. And if you love her even half as much as I do, don't give her a broken man." Luca nodded once, eyes glistening. They parted ways without another word. Weeks passed. Adrian moved out of town, changed his number, stopped checking social media. The silence was a kind of mercy. Then one day, a letter arrived in handwriting he recognized instantly. No return address. He sat on the floor by the window, the envelope in his hand. He stared at it for a long time before placing it, unopened, in the drawer beside his bed. Some truths were already lived. They didn't need to be read again. He lay back on the floor, staring at the ceiling. He didn't feel healed, but he felt lighter. And that, for now, was enough.